Open every other book in the Old Testament, and God speaks from burning bushes, splits massive seas, or sends fire down from heaven. Yet in one full book of the Bible, his name is erased entirely. Why would a sacred biblical book completely hide the name of God, and what secret is it trying to tell us that nobody explains? Today, we are exposing the hidden letter codes buried inside the original Hebrew text and the exact political crisis that forced the author to write in secret. Hit like and subscribe right now, and stay until the end, because the way God moves in the book of Esther will completely change how you view your own silent seasons. Let's look at what really happened. Most of us grew up hearing the story of Esther as a dramatic, feel-good tale about a brave young orphan who became queen and saved her people. We remember the golden crown, the royal banquets, and the courage of a woman who risked her life to speak to the king. It sounds like a perfect Sunday school story with a happy ending. But when you look closely at the actual text, you quickly realize that almost every reader completely overlooks its most unsettling mystery. It is easy to miss what is missing until someone points it out to you. It is not just that the name of God or the holy name Yahweh never appears in the text. The silence goes much deeper than that. Across all 10 chapters and more than 3,000 words, there is not a single mention of prayer. No one offers a sacrifice to the Lord. No prophet stands up to speak a direct word from heaven, and no one ever turns their eyes toward the holy temple in Jerusalem. Think about how strange that really is for a sacred book in the Bible. Every other story in Scripture is filled with bold prayers, divine visions, angelic messengers, or heavenly fire. But in the book of Esther, the spiritual sky seems totally quiet. There are no thunderbolts, no voice from the clouds, and no miraculous signs in the heavens. On the surface, it looks like a world where God has simply walked away and left human beings to run the show on their own. This missing piece is not a mistake, and it is not an accident left behind by a forgetful writer. The author of this story left God's name out on purpose to force us to ask a deeply important question. What do you do when heaven goes quiet? How do you keep believing when you cannot hear God speaking or see Him working in your life? The book of Esther never names God because it was written to reveal a powerful, stunning truth: God is often most active at the very moment He appears entirely absent. He does not need to show up in loud miracles to control the outcome, because He is already working behind the scenes of every single detail. To truly understand why God seems so hidden in this story, we have to step back in time and look at the world where this all took place. The year was around 480 BC, in a grand city called Susa, which was the heart of the powerful Persian Empire. This was during the reign of King Ahasuerus, also known in history as King Xerxes I. He was a ruthless, quick-tempered ruler who commanded a massive empire stretching across vast lands. Susa was a place of unbelievable wealth, giant palace walls, and total pagan power, where the king's word was absolute law, and human life was often treated as cheap. Living inside this giant empire was a small group of Jewish people who were surviving as a traumatized minority far away from home. Decades earlier, their ancestors had been dragged away from their homeland as prisoners when Jerusalem was destroyed. But by the time this story begins, something very important had changed. King Cyrus of Persia had already given the Jewish people permission to return home to Jerusalem to rebuild their destroyed temple and restore their lives. Many chose to go back, but many others stayed behind in Persia. The people in Susa were the ones who stayed. They were living hundreds of miles away from the holy city, surrounded by a culture that worshipped false gods, valued power above all else, and looked down on outsiders. They were a scattered, vulnerable community living under the shadow of a foreign government that did not care about their faith or their survival. This detail is crucial to understanding the entire book. These were Jewish families living in a deeply hostile foreign empire where standing up and loudly declaring your faith could easily cost you everything. In a kingdom where the Persian ruler was treated like a living god, declaring loyalty to Yahweh, the one true God of Israel, carried a huge risk. Publicly honoring the God of Abraham could put a massive target on your back and bring an immediate sentence of death upon your entire family. They were trapped in a dark, dangerous system, living in secret just to survive. They could not sing the songs of Zion out loud in the streets, nor could they openly gather at the temple. Everything about their world told them that their God was far away and that pagan power had won the day. But it was right inside this dark, dangerous place that God was about to move in a way no one expected. Even in a dangerous city where God seemed totally silent, his quiet power was already moving behind the scenes. When you look closely at how the story unfolds, you start to see something incredible. God's fingerprints are woven into a series of so-called coincidences that are mathematically impossible to explain as pure luck. Long before any great crisis appeared on the horizon, God was already placing key people into precise positions, setting a divine rescue plan in motion without making a single sound. We see this unfold in the second chapter of Esther, beginning in verses 5 through 7. A young Jewish orphan named Hadassah is taken from her quiet home and brought directly into the massive palace of Susa. To protect her life in this foreign court, her cousin Mordecai gives her a strict command: she must change her name to Esther and hide her true identity as a Jewish woman. Picture her walking through the towering halls of the royal palace, surrounded by giant limestone columns, sweet burning incense, and heavy golden gates. She is completely alone in a cold, pagan world, keeping her heritage a secret while every eye watches her. Yet step by step, against all odds, this young hidden woman rises to become the Queen of Persia. Then comes another event that seems like total chance. In Esther chapter 2, verses 21 through 23, Mordecai is sitting near the king's gate, the busy outer court where officials and guards gather under the hot sun. While sitting there, he happens to overhear two of the king's personal officers, Bigthan and Teresh, whispering in the shadows. They are angry, bitter, and plotting to murder King Ahasuerus in his own bed. Think about the timing required for this moment. Out of all the places Mordecai could have been standing, and out of all the hours in the day, he happened to be right there at the exact moment those two men whispered their evil plot. Mordecai quickly reports the treason through Queen Esther, the king is saved, and the two traitors are brought to justice. The story then adds a crucial detail: this brave act is written down in the royal record books, but Mordecai receives no reward, no promotion, and no public thank you. He is completely forgotten, and life goes on as normal. But this was not an oversight. That forgotten good deed was actually a silent trigger planted by God, left waiting in the dark until the exact right moment to explode. Just when those hidden pieces were quietly put into place, a massive storm suddenly hit the Jewish people. A proud and cruel man named Haman was elevated to become the highest official in the entire empire. When Mordecai refused to bow down and worship him, Haman's heart filled with pure hatred. But he did not just want to destroy Mordecai. He wanted to wipe out every single Jewish man, woman, and child across the entire Persian Empire. To choose the perfect date for this mass murder, Haman cast the pur, which means casting lots or rolling dice, trusting in pagan chance to pick his day of destruction. Once the date was chosen, he went straight to King Ahasuerus with a lie, claiming that a certain group of scattered people lived by different laws and posed a threat to the throne. In Esther chapter 3, verses 8 through 11, the king handed over his signet ring, stamping a legal decree that could never be broken. The order for total destruction was sealed in hot wax and rushed out by fast messengers to every province in the world. Darkness fell over the Jewish community, and a ticking clock began. Yet right in the middle of this terrifying crisis, when it felt like evil had completely won, something extraordinary was happening beneath the surface of the text. For thousands of years, ancient Jewish scribes carefully copying the ancient manuscripts noticed something truly astonishing tucked away in the original Hebrew words. While the surface story never openly speaks the name of God, for specific places in the original Hebrew text contain a hidden acrostic code. For example, in Esther chapter 5, verse 4, when Esther invites the king and Haman to a special banquet, the first letters of 4 consecutive Hebrew words spell out the sacred 4-letter name of God, YHWH, or Yahweh. In 2 of these hidden passages, the code is formed by the first letters of the words, and in the other 2, it is formed by the last letters. In some places, the letters read forward, while in others, they read backward, pointing directly to who is orchestrating the story from behind the scenes or turning events around. This was not a random coincidence or a clever game played by the author. It was an intentional design built directly into the text. The writer hid the holy name in plain sight so that pagan Persian censors reviewing the scrolls would see only a court story, while faithful readers would look closer and see the true king of the universe quietly writing his signature across the pages. With the sacred name of God secretly stamped into the background, the human tension on the surface reached a dangerous breaking point. Mordecai sent word to Esther, pleading with her to enter the inner court and beg the king for her people. But royal law was absolute. Anyone who approached the king without being called faced an instant death sentence, unless the king raised his golden scepter to spare their life. Esther knew the risk, but she stepped up in faith, calling all the Jewish people in Susa to join her in a desperate 3-day fast before she walked toward the throne room. While the entire city held its breath, Haman was so consumed by pride and hatred that he could not wait for the set day of destruction. He constructed a massive wooden pole, 75 feet high, right in his own courtyard. His plan was simple: he would ask the king the very next morning for permission to impale Mordecai on that giant spike for everyone to see. The trap was set, the wood was built, and it looked like Mordecai was running out of hours. That brings us to Esther chapter 6, verses 1 through 3, where the entire direction of history swings on a single, silent moment. On the exact night before Haman planned to murder Mordecai, King Ahasuerus could not sleep. Out of all the nights in his long reign, sleep suddenly fled from his eyes on this specific evening. To pass the long, quiet hours, the king commanded his servants to bring out the royal court records, the long, dry history books of his empire, and read them aloud. Out of thousands of pages of boring court notes, the reader happened to open the scroll to the exact page describing how Mordecai had uncovered the assassination plot by Bigthan and Teresh years earlier. The king listened to the report and stopped the reader. He asked what honor or reward had been given to the man who saved his life. The servants checked the records and answered that nothing at all had been done for him. Right at that precise second, footsteps echoed down the hall. Haman was walking into the court early in the morning, ready to demand Mordecai's execution. Before Haman could even open his mouth, the king ordered him to take royal robes and lead Mordecai through the city streets on the king's own horse, shouting honors for the very man Haman came to kill. In one single, quiet moment, the entire trap flipped, and the hunter became the hunted. I am not going to soften this for you, because we need to look at the hard truth. Esther's story is extremely messy, dark, and uncomfortable. We often like to clean up biblical heroes and turn them into perfect role models, but the reality on the page is far more complex. When you read the details carefully, you see that Esther lived inside a deeply compromised world, and she had to make difficult choices just to survive inside it. She hid her Jewish identity and her true faith for years under Mordecai's orders. Living in the royal palace, she ate non-kosher food that broke the religious laws of her ancestors. She was brought into the harem of a pagan king, eventually marrying a harsh ruler who did not honor the true God. She was deeply embedded in a corrupt, sinful imperial system that went against almost everything the law of Moses taught. She was not a flawless hero living a clean, perfect life in the light. She was a broken human being caught in a terrible, broken situation. This brings us to a powerful paradox that should give every one of us hope. God did not wait for Esther to have a perfect track record before he decided to use her. He did not wait for the Jewish people in Susa to become flawless spiritual giants before step-by-step moving to rescue them. Instead, God operated behind the dark curtains of a broken empire, using flawed, struggling human beings to fulfill his holy promises and protect his people. So many believers feel like God cannot use them because their past is messy, their current situation is complicated, or their faith feels weak. We often convince ourselves that God only moves when everything in our lives is clean, orderly, and spiritual. But the book of Esther smashes that false idea to pieces. It shows us that God works right in the middle of our messes, our mistakes, and our most confusing seasons. The raw truth of this book is that God's silence is never God's absence. Even when his name is not spoken, even when his presence is not felt, and even when human beings are making messy decisions, God is still on the throne. He does not abandon his promises just because the world around us has gone dark and quiet. Why is God's name missing from the book of Esther? The answer is as simple as it is profound: the author left it out because he wanted you to look closer. The missing name is an invitation to open your eyes and see that when heaven seems silent, God is not sleeping. He is actively arranging every single piece behind the scenes. He does not need a burning bush, a parted sea, or a loud voice from the sky to prove that he is in control. He is the master author who can write his divine purpose into the quietest, darkest moments of human history without uttering a single word out loud. You might be in a season of your life right now where you cannot hear God's voice, see his miracles, or feel his presence near you. You might look at your circumstances and feel completely overwhelmed by hard decisions, unfair situations, and forces that seem way beyond your control. It can feel like you are standing all alone in your own foreign palace, wondering why God is keeping quiet while everything around you falls apart. But just like he did in the limestone halls of Susa, God is actively working in your quiet seasons. He is taking the broken pieces, the painful delays, and the forgotten moments of your life, turning those plot holes into promises and those delays into deliverances. What looks like total absence to human eyes is actually God's subtle hand setting up a powerful victory. Never forget that God does not need to shout his name to show his hand. If this message helped remind you that God is still working behind the scenes of your life today, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below saying, "He is working in the silence." And make sure to share this video with a friend or family member who needs to be reminded today that God has not forgotten them.